Now, the first question is paper 1, section A. First question, the 10 marker questions. Normative approach in political science. Now, here we'll divide the answer in segments. Now, in the introduction, you will write about the significance of the approach and its evolution, the chronological evolution, how the roots can be traced all the way back to the works of Plato and even till the First World War. And then in the third point, you will write that of course, it was sidelined, although it was sidelined during the behavioral revolution for a couple of decades. The approach did make a comeback in the post-behavioral era in the works of Rawls, Hannah Arendt, Herbert Marcuse. Right now, so we'll start the introduction by talking about the significance of the approach, that normative approach to the study of political theory. It holds a significant place in the field of political studies. Why? Owing to its emphasis on values, norms as the foundations of political order and political life. Right. Then you'll write about its classical origins, that this approach is rooted in classical political thought spanning from Plato through to the end of the First World War, over 2,400 years, right? And that this approach is committed to establishing certain values as the standard for political life, political order, and political conduct. Right. Then, of course, you'll write the clarification that although it had been abandoned in the middle of the 20th century during the behavioral revolution in political science and political studies, normative approach, of course, did make a comeback in the post-behavioral era. Right, that is the post-behavioral revolution, where empirical approach and the normative approach was in a way fused, because as David Easton says, that political science or any study or any approach is meaningless without having its own telos, end or goal, a purpose, right? Now, of course, you'll mention in whose works. Again, you'll mention in a more expansive way with many scholars in the conclusion, but here briefly you mention the name of Rawls, Hannah Arendt, and Herbert Marcuse. Now, this is the first segment of the answer. In the second segment, you will discuss the core features of this approach. Now, feature number 1, that this approach, normative approach, provides guiding principles for political conduct, right? Because it focuses on a set of core values, right? And these values are the guiding light for political behavior. Here, thinkers like Plato and modern thinkers like Hegel, Rousseau, Marx, Mill, right, and Rawls, they focused on norms and concepts such as justice, rationality, equality, liberty as guiding values for a just society, right? So they wanted to evolve an ethics of politics, right? Because they wanted to legitimize a standard of politics. And these standards were meant to be rooted in values and philosophical concepts like justice, equality, liberty, right? And because this would establish an ethical framework as the regulating principle of political life and political conduct and political order. Now you will write the second feature, that normative approach to political theory. It shows the way to pursue, right, an ideal political order, right? And see, normative approach, it seeks to define the best possible political structure. Think about Plato, right? He criticized democracy of ancient Athens, and he envisioned, visualized, conceptualized rule by the philosopher king or rule by the guardian classes, right? In his ideal state, the Calipolis, the beautiful city, right? Now, which was based on the forms of the other world. Now, then Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he came up with the concept of general will, right? Marx imagined a de-alienated communist society as the ideal societal order, right? Then you'll write the third feature of this approach, that this approach offers critical examination of existing realities. Right, this is another fundamental aspect of normative approach to political studies, that it offers a critical examination of the existing status quo or the prevailing reality. Right, it holds up ideal values as a standard, and it allows credible critique. It provides credible critique of existing political and social systems. Again, you can give examples of Plato, how he criticized the shortcomings and the limitations and the problems and the burdens of Athenian direct limited compulsory democracy, and how Karl Marx dissected incisively the problems or the ills of capitalism and the effect it had on the working class or the proletariat. Then even you can give the example of Hannah Arendt, how she criticized the way ideologies were manipulated to create totalitarian fascist states, right? Then they advocate radical change. This approach advocates radical change because they always look up to values, and if these values are not prevalent, you had to change the society as a whole. Here you can quote the example of C.B. Macpherson, who boldly challenged the pluralist theories of democracies, right? Robert Dahl's theory, Joseph Schumpeter's theory, right? Because Macpherson accused these thinkers of justifying the existing exploitative systems of democracy or justifying the status quo. So Macpherson advocated his own radical theory of democracy, where political and economic powers were completely decentralized, right? Then in the conclusion, you write that the normative approach had lost its relevance. Of course, it was believed to be that the approach had lost its relevance, of course, because of competition by other subjects in humanities such as psychology, economics, and these subjects had adopted a more positivist approach. They had embraced scientific techniques, right? So many political scientists such as David Easton felt that normative approach had outlived its existence and relevance and need. So they said, abandon this, let's become more like a natural science, right? Of course, because of this, a second decline in political theory occurred, and then finally in the 70s and the 80s, post-behavioral approach emerged, where political philosophers not only used normative approach, but to help serve its purpose better, they fused empirical and scientific approach with normative philosophical approach. And according to Dante Germino, Michael Oakeshott, Hannah Arendt, Leo Strauss, John Rawls, C.B. Macpherson, Robert Nozick, Herbert Marcuse, Jürgen Habermas, Alasdair MacIntyre, Michael Walzer, these philosophers, great political scientists and philosophers, revived political philosophy by bringing back values, norms, critical inquiry, and prescription at the center of political analysis. And thus, normative approach, it enabled us, it equips us not only with critical tools for assessing society, but it also shows the importance of transforming the existing or prevailing political order, right? And normative approach, by coming back, it saved political theory from becoming irrelevant.